Hello everyone, welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to work with APIs in Django. So this is going to be our simple workflow. So first of all, we're trying to see how to work with serializers, like Django Restframework, and how to build a simple API. So this is going to be our structure. So we're going to have a model of a nested model. So we have an author, right, as a parent model, and then an author can have multiple books and a book can have multiple reviews. So as you can see, this is a nested, in a way it's like a nested serializer, right? So a book can have multiple, can have an author, multiple author, but in our approach you just go with author and then books and then reviews. And this is going to be the structure for our database. And then we're going to build a serializer, and the serializers are going to be used to serialize or convert our data from one form to another form, which will be easy for it to be understood by our API, right? So let's see how to do that from scratch. And by the end of this course, we'll try and see how to work with model serializer, the normal serializers, how to work with nested serializer, as well as other frameworks. So let's start from scratch. I'll go back to my workspace, which is here, and then I'm going to create my project. So we can just going to give it a simple call mega block, right? And I'll move into mega block. And then I'm going to create a virtual env, right? Virtual env. So virtual env. Then I'm going to go to env. It's going to create a virtual environment for us in our location. Then after that, I'm going to install the various packages that we need, right? So let's activate it. So script activate, then pip install Django, and then you need Django Rest Framework, and then you also need Django Rest Framework, yet another Swagger, right? This is what we need. So these are the three stuff. So Django for the backend itself, Django Rest Frameworks to help us with the serialization and building our API, and then DRF, yet another Swagger to give us a very nice Swagger interface, right? So whilst it is doing that, I'm just going to open my workspace. So we'll be using Pycharm for this, right? And then since you're using Pycharm, we want to explore some basic stuff you can do with it. So perfect. So we have our project here, as you can see, and then I'm going to go with Django admin. Then I'm going to go with start project, and let's call the project mega block, right? That's the name of the project. And then once it's created that particular structure, we will now move into the mega block. As you can see, we have the manage.py. Then with the manage.py, I'm just going to go with start app, and the name of the app is going to be called, let's give it as blog app, right? We can make it like this if you want, or just straight like this, but let's go with this approach. Perfect. Now we have our structure. Perfect. So we have the mega blog and we have the blog app. So we can use VS Code to help us with that, but we want to use Pycharm. So I'll go back again to my workspace, and I have Pycharm already installed, and I'm going to open Pycharm. So once I open Pycharm, you start doing some activities. Okay, so Pycharm is very good, and I've modified this, so I'll just go back here, then I'll go to my open project. So open project, and I'm going to go to my January tutorial. Inside here we have my project, which was the mega blog, and that is what I'm going to open. So I'm going to open this, and then here, right? So I just open this directory, trust, and then this window. Perfect. So it's opening it perfectly for us, and once it's done, we will just go back again. So that's the nice thing about Pycharm. Perfect. So it's going to identify the virtual environment, and then it's going to activate it for us. Perfect. So whilst it's doing that, the first thing is that anytime you create a Django project, we have the blog app, which is the app itself, and then we have the mega blog, which is the project. So I'll go to my settings, my project, then I'm going to come back to my installed apps, then I'll go back to my package. So blog, and let's go app. Right, that's the first one. We also have some third-party packages, so these are going to be our third-party packages which you'll be using, and then or apps, we can call it apps, and then these include the REST framework, so REST framework, right? So that's what we have, and then we also have the other one for Django Rest framework, yet another Swagger, right? So this is the next one. So these are the two we are using, and then we are done with the settings, right? So I'll close the settings and I'll move to my URLs. Then inside my URLs, I'm going to add some stuff. So path, go to create empty, then include the app that we have. So app, then I'm going to call it as my blog, or blog underscore app dot URLs, which I'll create later. And then I need to import include. So the nice thing with Pycharm is that you can just import this name, and then you see that it's coming from here, then it's automatically imported. Perfect, right? So we have gotten our URL. So we have to create this URLs dot blog app dot URL. So I'll just close my manage the mega blog, which is a project, and come back again to my blog itself and then create these URLs. So I'll come back here and I'm going to create my URLs. So urls.py. Then what I do is that I mostly copy the same thing to avoid repetition. So I'll copy this and then I'll paste it inside my URL here, right? And I'll take off the first one. So no more include. We don't need the include. And then I'm just going to first give my first route. So the first route is going to come from here. So from dot import views, right? So let's see if everything is working. So I'm just going to go with my views dot index view, and I'm going to give it a name. So this name is going to be the name of the home page, right? And there is nothing here, right? Perfect. So we have to go to my views, which is here, and create my view structure. So let's go as my def index view, and this is going to be my first route request. It's supposed to be request, and then I just go back again, and then let's return render. If it takes in request, it takes in request. As you can see from here, when we go back here to render, so we have request, so it takes in request, and it also takes in the template, which in our case we have not created it, but we're going to call it as index.html, and then the context. So let's create the context. These are all basic stuff we are doing. So context, this is going to be my title, and then let's call it as mega blog. So mega blog, right? Let's save it, and we need to create this template. So I'll go back to the same location as my blog app. I'm going to create a new directory called template, and then here I'll just create my index.html file that I specified. So index.html, and then I can just come back again. So div, then let's call it as class. Maybe in the future we use bootstrap, and then I'm just going to go with my a2, then the ginger title. So this title here is coming from the title inside here, right? And nice thing with Pycharm is I can click on this reformat, then everything is nice, and the indentation and the arrows goes perfect. So you have built a simple app. So let's see if the app is working. So I'll come back again to my workspace here, automatically activated the virtual environment. Let's go back again, and then into my location here, you can see that we have my mega blog. I'll move into my mega blog. I want to see where my manage.py is. If I go, we have my manage.py, then I can go with manage.py run server, right? So to run my first instance. So let's open this one. You can just click on it, or you can just, you see you have click open in Chrome, open in Firefox. So let's open in Chrome, and this is going to be our mega blog, right? So the mega blog that we typed here is showing here. Perfect. So that is the basic, but the nice thing is that I can come back and create a settings. So come to edit configuration. I want to add my configuration. I'll pick Python because this is Python manage.py, and let's give it a name called run server, and then I'll specify the directory, right? The script I want to run. So I'll click on this and pick inside my mega blog, that's the project. I'll go into my where the manage.py, this is the one that it was used to run this, right? Now I'll click on it, select it, and then run server. So this command, I'm creating a configuration file so that I don't need to type what I typed here over and again. So apply, okay, and then so that I don't need to be typing what I did, so I can just stop this, and then I can just go run. You can now see that the command was run, right? Perfect. Okay, we are done with the basics. So let's go back to what we specified in our we need to work on our model. So the model is what contains the structure for the data, and or the schema and the structure for the data, which is going to be how the data is going to be stored inside our database, and it's going to be another interface to help us interact with our application, right, with the database, and then with the ORM. So let's go back again, and then inside the same location you have my models. I'm going to create my structure. So class, we are going to call it as my author, and the author is going to inherit from models.model, and then this will be the first name. Every book has an author, and then the author has a name, right? So I want to give the name for the author, and it's going to be models.character field. Then I'll specify that, okay, this must have a maximum length of, let's say 100, right? And then we need an email. So the email is also going to be models.email field, and then this can be blank because we don't want to be strict, and null means true. So let null here true means that within the database we can accept null. Blank here means that we can accept blank from a form or any other stuff, right? So this is for the database, this is for forms and any other stuff. Okay, perfect. And then let's go with the date that was created, and I can just go with models.date time field, and then I can say auto. Now see, we have auto created, which is a new feature, but let's go with auto now add, and then let's set that one to true. Automatically add the timestamp. That is for the model structure. We need to build one for the books. So every book has an author. So class book model, and then this book must have a title. Every book must have a title, which is going to be models.character field. Maximum length of a book can have a lot of character. It can be 500, right? And then that is it. Let's specify the book also have a year in which it was published. So models.date field, and then we want to set it as blank as true, and then null as true. We don't want to be very strict, right? Because we may not know. And then we need to specify the author. So as our diagram shows, a book can have an author, right? So an author can have multiple books. So because of that, we need a foreign key, right? Many to one. So it's going to be my models.foreign key. And then as you can see from here, we have two. That is, what is this book related to, right? So it's related to the author. And then we also have onDelete. So what does onDelete means? onDelete means that if I delete this book class, what do you want to do to the thing that is related to, right? So onDelete, we can say that, okay, onDelete, we have models.set null, right? We have cascade, we have protect, and the rest, right? Perfect. And then we can also give it a related name. As you can see, there is related name here. Then I'm going to call it as books, right? So in other words, if I come back to author, I can say author.books, right? Perfect. Or you can leave it like that, and then you can get it straight away. So let's format it. We have gotten our to structure. Now we have our model structure, right? But our database doesn't know. Our database has no clue about it. So how do we make our database know? So we can simply do that by coming back again to our migrations. You can see that I said we should apply some migration here, but before I apply the migration, I want to see it for my admin. So I'll go back to my admin, and then I'm going to import. So from .models import the book model, and then the author model. Then I'm going to say that, okay, in my admin.site, I want to register this model because I want to be able to see them and be able to manage them also from there, right? So that is the first one. Then do the same thing, admin.site.register my author, right? So we have these things registered, and I'll open my terminal, and I'm going to run, and build our database structure, right? As you can see, inside our migrations, there's only one file here, but once I run the make migrations, it's going to create a migration file, which we'll explain. So let's start with it. So let's go back here into my terminal, the same location as my manage.py. So Python manage.py. Then we have the first one is we can just go with make migrations, right? If I go with make migrations, it's going to create a migration file. You can see that created model author, create model book. If I go back to my migrations file, right, as you can see, it appears that nothing is there, right? Now let's go back again. It has created the first initial, which we'll see later on. And then let's go back again and then write migrate. So migrate. So now it's going to create all of those files. You can see that it applied the initial one, right? And this initial is what is found here. Let's explain it quickly. So based on the structure that we had for our models, which is here, we have the author model. So it's going to create a model. So migrations.create model. So this is the migrations file, which is going to interpret these things for the model, right? For the database itself. So interpret this and send it to the model. So create model, and it's giving us the name. So the name of the model is author. The fields that it have, all these fields, and then their specifics have been specified here, right? So that means that you can actually modify these ones before you push it to the database. The same thing happens to the create model. Okay, perfect. Now, since we have some stuff, let's see how to, we have built the structure. We need to build an API to help us see it. So let's go back again and see how to do that. So I'll go back to my views, I'll close the view, and then in the same location that I have my app, I'm going to create another file called API.py, right? And then I'm going to import some stuff there. So I want to import REST framework. So REST framework, we have .views, right? So there is ViewSets, there is views. Now I want to first import some stuff. So but before we do this, right, let's work on our serializers, right? So the serializer is going to pick this structure of the model and then serialize it or convert it into a form that is understood by HTTP, right? That is understood by our API. That can be able to be transferred over the wire, right? Oh, so how do we do that? So in the same location, I'll create another file called my Serializers. You can give it any name, but by convention, the name is Serializers. Then from my REST framework, I'm going to import Serializers, right? So we can just go with this option from REST framework, import Serializers, and then I'm going to also import my model. So from .models, import my book model and then my author model. So let's create my first serializer. Let's call it as my author serializer, right? Then this is going to be a model serializer. So serializers dot model. So this model serializer has some magic behind the scene that based on it's just a regular serializer, so that it has some features that makes it easy, right, for us to work with some basic stuff like default, create, update, and then it picks the model and automatically assign the fields for us, right? So let's see how to work with this. So it's going to be the same thing. Then class meta, it's a meta class. Then I'm going to specify the model that I want to create a serializer for, which is going to be my author model. Then I can also specify the fields. So the fields can also be in a tuple. Then you can either go with this option here, and that's gonna score all, and it's gonna score all. That means that it will create the serializer, all the fields for all of them, right? All of them, including the ID, right? So let's save it, and then let's do the same thing for the book. So the book serializer is going to be my class, book serializer, which is also going to be my serializers dot model serializer, and then class meta. Let me copy this to save us time. then book. So let's save it. So we have created our serializer, and then the next thing we need to do is go back to our API, and then this is where we're working, right? So I'm going to import. So from REST framework, I want to import ViewSets. Then I want to import my model ViewSet. Then let's import our models also. .models, import my book, and then the author. Then we also need to import our serializers, which is going to be my book serializer, and then my author serializer. That is all. So let's create our first view set. Let's call it as my author view set. Then it will inherit from model view set. Then when it's inherit, we need to specify the query set. So the query set is going to be the particular query that we want to use, which is the model. In our case, it's going to be my author.objects.all. So you can modify the query set to filter out the data you want. Then we have the serializer class, which is going to be this serializer that you are passing. So what you are saying that, okay, pick this serializer and then serialize this query set and return it to our user. So this is all the code you need to create an API endpoint. Perfect. So let's build our route, right? So I'll go back again to the blog URL, the same location. I'm going to build our basic route. So this is going to be my API route. So I'll just go back again because that's path. Then I'll just go with API version 1, and then I'll call it as my authors, right? Or author. It can be authors, it can be author. You can give it any name that you want it to be, but most of the time, if it's a resource, it's better you make it plural, right? So authors. Then I can specify the API. We need to import it from. So from API dot we have my author serializer or view set. Then we have as view, and this takes in, because a model serializer, it takes in the method. So get. So if I visit my get endpoint, I want you to use list, right? It can also be retrieve. If I visit the post method, this same endpoint with the post method, I want you to do this activity. I want you to create. Right, that is a basic understanding. So these are simple endpoints here built. Let's see if it works. Right, so I'll just go back again, so everything is working. Then I'll open my browser, the same place we have. Then I'll go with my 128, which is, we had it here. So let me expand it here, right? An endpoint was API. Then we have my version 1, then my authors. If I go with this, you're going to see that if everything works, it's going to perfectly work, but it's giving us an error. So let's check the error we are getting. I'll go back again to my run, and we are seeing this error here because we forgot a comma. So I'll just go back again and then bring the comma. So save it, automatically we run. And then if I refresh, we have this nice interface. Right, so this interface is coming by default from Django Restframework, hence the name here. And then this is our form. So with this, we can create our data endpoint. You can also go with raw data, which is like this, right? Or we can just go with the form. With the form, I can pass in some data. So let's pass in, as the name goes, Joshua, and then Joshua at Gmail. So we need to specify that Joshua is supposed to be, let me switch my to English. So Joshua, yeah, we have another. Sometimes I have issues with my mouse, not with my with my keyboard, right? At gmail.com. And then if I click on post, you see that the information was sent. And because we specified here inside, let me close this, we don't need it. We don't need this, need nada. And because we specified inside our serializer that all fields, right? So it's going to bring my name, email, date created, and the ID. So that explains why here we have the ID here, we have the name, and we have the email and the date created, right? Because you specified them. You specified other field. Perfect. We can also create another one. So let's create another one, Jesse. And this is going to be Jesse. Click on post, and we have 2, right? Perfect. Since in our endpoints, in our blog, right, we have get and list, right? With this little code we have, we are getting all these features, right? So I can just go back again, and if I click on the author, we have, this is a get endpoint. As you can see, the method is get. So if I go to this endpoint with the get endpoint, with the get method, we get all the information there, right? Because we specified here list, right? We specified here list. So this list is coming automatically from it. So if I go back to my serializer and not to my API, click on this model view set, you can see that we have create model, mixin, retrieve, update, delete, list model. So the get is going for this list, and then the create, as you see this function, is going for the create model, right? So if I click on the create, see that there is a create. So in case you want to modify it, you can actually pick it. So what it's doing is that it's picking the serializer I specified and picking the request data, serializing it. So if it's valid, that means that it has been serialized. Then it's going to save it, right? And then save it into the database. That is a basic understanding. So you can actually modify it. So later on in the future, you try and see how to modify this one to do what you want it to do. Okay, so let's close these ones. So all of these things out of the box is inheriting all these things that we should. It's inheriting all the methods. So create, retrieve, update, delete, post. So I can actually do the same thing, right, to retrieve and update out of the box, right, by just specifying it here. So if I go back here and I go with, let's say, put or patch, and then patch goes with partial update, out of the box I already have my patch. So now if I go back again and I change the method, right, I can change the method. I can change the method and I'm going to get stuff, right? But how do you make it more useful, right? How do you make it more exciting? This is a nice user interface, which is good, but sometimes we want the Swagger UI. So how do we do that? So to get the Swagger UI, all you have to do is that we already imported it. So let's close this. We already imported Swagger UI at the beginning of the session, and then inside our mega blog, we had our, inside our settings, we had our third-party packages, and this must always follow after the static files because it picks some of them to build the Swagger, right? So this is what we imported, and with this we can build our Swagger UI. So I'll just go back again to Swagger. So Django Restframework here, as you can see, this is it. And then I want to, you can see that this has a lot of stats. It's a very useful package. I'll come back here, and then I'll go back to there's several ways you can work with it, right? So let's go back here to this table, generator, and then I'll copy it, right? So it's very easy. So it's going to give you this nice interface. That's the nice thing about Django. So you install it, and then you add it, which you have already done, as you could see. You add it, and then the next thing is for the URLs, you need this one. So I'll copy this from here, all of them to here. Go back to my URLs here, and then I want to paste them above, right? So let's take off this. Right, and I want to change this one from snippet to mega blog API, right? Perfect. And then I don't need the terms of service and the license. So yeah, let's take it out. You can keep it. Perfect. So this is all that we need, right? And then we need to specify this one. So I'll copy this through, and you should always put it above your API route so that it identifies the route it has to pick. And that is all that we need, right? So let's go back again, and if I go back here, the same location, we have this is the old one. But if I go to 1.2, the same place, which is here, you can see that we have Swagger. We have the Swagger format, the redoc, and the API itself. So if I switch to my Swagger, we have this very nice user interface, and this is more useful in case you are a backend engineer, as well as useful for front-end engineers, so that they don't need to go through a lot of things. They just come back here and see the endpoint. So we have get, post, patch, and this automatically were created because we specified get, post, create, right? These were created out of the box, right? Because we are inheriting from ModelViewSets. That's why we had all of this. So if I click on this now, I can just click, try it out, and I have it here. Very nice, right? I can also see the entire serializer which was used, which is quite informative. So you have the ID is an integer, the name is required, the email, the date created. This is automatically generated by Swagger, right? Which is quite cool. Just automatically generated by this framework, automatically generated perfectly. Okay, if I go back to the authors, you can see that it has also created one, right? So we have the name and then a string, so I can actually add another one. So let's add Mac, and then we can go with Mac as example. So if I click on this, now Mac has been created, and if I scroll down, you see that it's call, right, which you can copy and use to create the same information that we have above. This is the endpoint, and then this is the response body, and then the response headers with some information, as well as the request time, which is quite cool. Okay, perfect. So you have seen how to work with an API. We have seen how to build this structure, the author. Let's see how to work with the nested serializer, right? So in case I want to work with the books also, because the book is nested, right? The reason I'm saying the book is nested is that we have the book and then the author, right? So how will you work with it? I'll come back again to my API. I'll copy this entire stuff, and then we will just change them from author to book view set, change the query set to book, and then I need to change the serializer to book serializers. Go back to my URLs, and I need to add that one. So I'm just going to copy this entire stuff here, which is the same, and then I'm going to change it from authors to books, right? Perfect. And then it goes with my get list post. I have to change this one to book view set, and then we have get list post patch create. If I save it and I come back to the API, refresh it, so we already have them, right, out of the box. We have the three, which is quite cool. And if I click on this, there is no books, so it's going to be empty, right? And then I can come back to the post, and if I come back to the post and I click on try it out, or let's cancel and let me show you how the endpoint looks like. So if I come back to the endpoint, you can see that we have book, and the book is having a title, an ID, a year, and the author is also of the instance called author, right? So how will you work with it? So because we are using model serializer and then model view set, it will automatically give us the structure. So if I go to try it out, so we have the title, the year, and then the author. But this author here is not the full information we had here. It is not this, right? As you can see, it's not name and email. It is just some integer, right? Just some integer. That's what is specifying here, integer, right? So how will it work? So you have to use the ID. This integer here is the ID of this particular model that with the author is the ID of the author that you want to use, right? So in that case, we have, if I go back to my get and I click on try it out, you can see that we have ID1, ID2, ID3. So I want to use ID1. So I just pick ID1, right? And I can just give it as my first book. So first book. And the moment I just go with execute, it worked without any error. It produced my first book with the ID, right? And now if I go back again to my get books and I click on it, you're going to see that we have the same information there, right? Which is very cool, very nice. So that is how to work with Django, right? So this is in case you have a structure and it's like an author that can have multiple books, right? Or let's say you want to many or many to one. If you are using Model Serializer, the first option is you can just use it automatically picks the ID as the identifier that you use to pick the entire data, right? Perfect. And because you are using ID, if I come back and I just go with 3 or let's say 4, something that is not there, if I click on this, it's going to give us an error, right? Invalid PK, object does not exist, because under the hood it is validating and checking if this particular ID that you supplied is actually in the author instance, right? Perfect. That is the first one. So it gives you the validation and everything in case you do it in this way, right? In case you have a structure like this and then you are using the ModelViewSets, this is the first one. But sometimes it is not as simple as that. If it is very nested, it becomes a problem. So how do we fix it? So I just go back again and then we will build another endpoint using not the model serializer, but I'm going to use the plain serializer. So I'm going to call this book plain, right? So let's go to this. So book view version 1 book, or you can call this plain serializer ViewSets. So this time we are not going to be using the book serializer. We are going to create a plain serializer here. So instead of this, we will create a plain one. So this is going to be using regular or plain serializer. So how does it work? So it's going to be my class, and I'm going to call it as my book plain serializer. It sounds funny, but let's call it as regular serializer. And this will take the serializers.serializer. It will not take the model serializer instance, it will take only just the serializer instance class, and then I will just specify what I want to serialize, right? So if you are using this option, you have to specify what do you want to serialize. So we want to first of all serialize the title. It's going to be serializer.character field, and you should always match, if you want, you should always match we have it here, your model to your serializer, right? So it's going to be serializer.character field because our title was a character field, and then you can specify, say, null is equal to true or any of the parameters that you want, right? Maximum length, or let's say 500, right? Perfect. You can also specify that this is required, right? Then true. Then the next one is that we had our year, so the year is also going to be serializer. We also have a date field serializer, in which you can also specify the particular date field there that you want, right? As we had here. So we can also call it as can just leave it like that. And then the next thing we can also specify is that we can also specify, so default here, I want the default to be datime.now, right? We want it to be this option here. And then we also want the author. So this is where the issue comes. So here there are several ways. So the first one is that we can just use the primary key related field, right? So if you are using this option here, that means that you have to specify, because this it doesn't know whether this is related to something. So you have to specify what it is related to. So with Serializer.PrimaryKeyRelatedField, I just specify the particular query set that is related to. So in next case, it's going to be related to my author, right? So that's Serializer.object. Right, you can just go with .object.all or just object, and then you can also specify many is equal to false, right? Perfect. You can also specify whether it is required or not. So that is all. So this is how to create a plain regular serializer, and we can use this inside our API. So let's import it, and then this is going to be my book regular serializer. If I save it, let's go back again to our URLs, and then what I want to do is that I want to change it, right? So let's close this one. Same thing we did here for the book. This is going to be version 2, right? So let's go to v2, and I'm going to change this one from here to, I'm going to give it a different name. So plain serializer, or let's call it as regular serializer ViewSets, so that you maybe in the future you can know what it's doing. Perfect, right? And we're also doing the same thing. If I save it and I come back to my endpoint, refresh. So we have v1, v2 out of the box, right? The moment to just do that, Django is very nice to make it better. So we have our v2. If I go back here to the structure of my v2 for the post, right? Let's see. You see that we have a book, title, and author, and this is also similar to what we had here. It's very similar to this structure, right? So behind the scene, the model serializer is also using a regular serializer. I call it plain, but with some magic behind the scene to make it look quite useful, right? So that's what it's doing behind the scenes. So it's picking whatever is related, and then it's building the respective relations right out of the box. So let's see if everything works. So I'll go back again to my v2, which is here, as you can see. Let's try it out, and still it has given us the same thing, although the ViewSets is also ModelViewSets, right? So it has given us the same thing. So I come back here, I can now do the same thing I did. So I can just pass in second book. Automatically we have the time already specified, and then I can also give it the ID. So let's give it as 2, and if I click on it, it said create must be implemented, right? So why is it telling me that create must be implemented? So the reason is that once you are using the PrimaryKeyRelatedField stuff, you have to override and you're not using how do I say it? You're not using a model serializer, right? As we saw earlier on with this option here, we had this a model serializer, we had some functions or some functions already defined for us, like create, like update, and the rest. But if you're not using model serializer, you have to define it by yourself. So let's see how to do that in order to fix this error. So we'll just go back again and create. It takes in self and validated, and then once it takes in self and validated, what it does is that you have to pick the information coming from here, right? So in this case, return, then we want to pick .object. So which is the object here, .create, And this is how we do that. So I'm going to unpack everything with asterisk validated, right? So that is how to do that. So this is how you would have created it normally. So you have to define, because this is a plain regular serializer, so in that case you have to define your own create and define your own update. So I go back here, and then this is it. If I refresh it, see that now we have 201. That means that it was created, and we have our response, right? Very cool. So that is how to use a regular serializer with primary key related field, right? This is fun in case it's like nested. The other alternative is that in case you don't want to use this option, this is a create option. The next option is you want to use nested, right? Nested serializer approach. So this is going to be my nested. So using nested serializer. So this is quite easy if you have a very simple model structure, right? But sometimes it can be complex. So in that case, using a primary key all the time may not help. So one of the ways that you can also use a nested serializer. So I can just move this here, move this entire stuff, and then place it with my auto serializer, which is this one. The auto serializer from above here, right? This one. You can define it like we have defined it there, and then use it, right? So in that case, let's call it as book nested serializer, right? And this will pick the data, and once it picks the data, we will need a way to unpack them, right? And then use them for it to work. So how do you do that? That is another question. So we just, first of all, for it to work, you have to, since this is, if I save it, and let's go back to the same endpoint we had, which is here. So I'll copy this so we have all the three. Let's create my nested serializer ViewSets, right? And I'm going to change this one from this to nested serializer, and I have to post it from here. If I change the endpoint, so I'll just go again. So this is going to be v3, and then this will be my nested. If I refresh and I come down to v3, you can see the structure has changed. Now it is totally different from all the previous structure. It's different from the structure here. You can see that this is just the title, author, and then the title, year, and author, and the author is an ID, which is the primary key for the author instance. But if I come back to version 3 with the nested, we have the title here, and then the author is no more just the instance, it's just another serialized instance that you have, which has the name and the email. So you have to nest this. So this is nested within this one. So in that case, if I pass in some data, I have to nest it. So I have to go back again. So let's call it as third book. So third book. And then I have to pass in the name there. So let's pass in, so Jesse. And then we need to pass in the email, which was Jesse. But this is going to fail. If I click on create, we have an error. Cannot assign ordered dict, right? So once you are using a nested serializer like we have here, right, it picks this data and it also picks this data, but this data is nested and it's a dictionary, right? And it's an ordered dictionary, so it cannot assign it. It cannot use this option. So you have to first of all pop it out, right? So we need to pop the nested data out of the validator, right? And then convert right appropriately. So in that case, we can just call it as my author. I'm going to call that author, and then I'll just go straight away with author data, then validated data dot pop. The reason we are using pop is that we want to pop it out to remove it completely from it, and then I want to specify the name. So this author here is the data from here, right? Perfect. And then once we pop it out, we can now go with author, then we can actually check it out. So author.object.get. Then I want to use this convention. This is another nice method. So this will check any of the values, so whether it is ID or the name. If it's available, it's going to fetch it, right? Not just if one of them is not available to use the other one. And then once it's done, I'm going to specifically pass the author there, and then the remaining validated data will also be assigned. So this is going to fix it. So if I go back again and I click on execute, you can see that author has no attribute object because it's called objects. And then I click on execute, you can see that we have our data set, and you could see some validation around, right? Author matching query does not exist because we have a wrong name. So I'll go back again to my authors, click execute, and see the name we had. So we had Jesse at Gmail. So we had Jesse and then Jesse at Gmail. So you have to make sure that the names are correct. So I'll just copy this one here, go back to what we had, which was here, and make sure that it's the same, right? So it was example at Gmail, that's why it failed. It's supposed to be example, not example, but gmail.com. And if I click on execute, we can see that it did pass, right? So once you're using this option, the validation and everything is within it, right? But there's a better approach. We can move the validation of the data outside before we unpack it, right? So that in case I come back here and I put in, let's say, John or J, right? J is not available. If I go with J, and let's see if it works. So this is going to be my fourth book. If I click on this, if it works, so it is not working. So author matching query does not exist. So how do you add some validation before you get this 500 internal server error, right? So this means it has to go to the database and check it before, but we need a way to check it in the proper way. So how do we do that? So that is where we can just go back and move the validation from here outside, and then we can just go with def, so validated. And then Django comes with a very nice feature called validated, and then you just go with, you specify the name of the field you want to validate first, and it takes in the value, right? So you can say that try author, right? I want to, so you move this function, you move this here. There are several ways to do that. You move it here and check it with my value, right? If except if it exists, right? So except author does not exist, so does not exist. You can also use filter in case you want. Then you raise a serializer dot validation error. Then you can just tell them the same thing. So invalid author. The author does not exist, right? Then we can now return the author, right, if it exists. So this will automatically validate the data for us, right? Perfect. So now that is a very nice way. If I go back here, see that we had it here, give us this not nice error. But now if I click on execute, you see we have too many values to unpack, so we just fix it here because we forgot the one asterisk, which is supposed to be here. Then let's try it again. So once I try it again, you can see that the error moved from 500 to 400. So now the error is now on the client side, right? Because it's validating, okay, invalid author, the author does not exist. And this is a better way, right, to make your nested serializer model to have some checks within them, right? So you can also use this one. There are several ways, but this is one of them, right? Perfect. And if it's valid, then it will move on to this approach. So we have seen some ways in which we can work with Django, with serializers, how to work with model serializer, which does a lot of things for you, how to use your regular serializer, which is very useful, and then how to use a nested serializer, and how to use primary key related field in two different approaches. So if you have a nested serializer or a nested model, you can use this approach, but you have to define your validation, you have to define your create method and stuff by yourself, or you can just go with the primary key related field and you specify the query set. Sometimes you can make this one as read only, sometimes you can make it as write, and then you can also return the normal one, right? Perfect. So let me show you one nice thing we can also do, which is very cool, right? So we have seen how to work with Django Serializer to build a simple endpoint, but as you could see, when we return, if you go back to the books here, I go with execute, we had author 1, author 2, author 3 and stuff, which is okay, but sometimes we also want it to look like this. We want it to have a nice structure, so let's fix this one so that I show you what I mean. So if I go with Jesse, execute, so it said there must be a mapping, not an author, right? So it failed because after it has finished, it was not working. So we must, let's see. So here, so the model query set dot get after must be a mapping, not author. So we can let's see. Yep, and now it works, right? Because we moved the validation here. So after it has validated it, it returns the object. So because we moved the validation out, we don't need to do this again. So with the popping, once we are popping it out, it's automatically validating the information for us behind the scene. And now we have this author there, right? That is why it works. So in case we want to get this structure for these ones that we had here, how do we do that? So that is a very nice feature called true representation that you can use to modify them. So if I go back here to my serializer, I can actually add that feature to it. So I can go back to the normal serializer that we had, or let's say any of them like this. Let's say with a regular serializer, if I go back to the version 2, if I click on the book list, try it out, right? We want to modify this one to look like the nested serializer. How do we do that? We can come back here, then we can just go def2 so that we have two representation and two internal value. So the two internal values that are going to convert it to the internal value that's going to be used before serialization. Two representation is after it has finished serialized, and how do you want the output? How do you want this thing to look like, right? That is the two representation after it has finished. So in that case, it's going to be this. Then it just goes straight away with two representation. if I go back here and I click on it here, you can see how it is, right? Let's see. We can jump to source and see it, but the simple overview that with the two representation, just go with my data, which is going to be by super dot. Very simple, but let me try it out simply. So let's go with def to presentation, and then I want to go to source, right? So go to implementation. Yeah, okay, it's here. Okay, I can just find it here. There's the fields. So we have two internal value here, and that is all the magic is doing. And then there is two representation, as you can see, right? So we want to pick this and then do whatever I want to do with it, right? So in that case, it can be back to here. We have the instance, and then it's going to be the data, and then I think it's super dot representation, right? So that means that you pick the data itself, and I think it goes with the instance. I've forgotten, but yeah, right. So this is going to return the entire stuff back again, right? And then we can return this, but we want to also modify. So we want to modify the data. So I'm going to pick the author, and I want to modify it with whatever data that's coming. So instance dot author. Then I'm going to pass in my serializer around it. So let's pass in the author serializer dot data. Now I can return my data, right? So hopefully it works. Hopefully I'm not making mistakes. So if I go back again to here, so we are here, right? See the format. If I click on this, so now it has automatically transformed it and giving us the entire data, right, out of the box. So that is how to modify the output, right? So this is how to modify. So how to modify the output serializer, right? So after validation and stuff, so after it has finished validation and all the stuff, you can use this option to modify it. You can also drop some stuff out, do whatever you want to do with it, right? So we have seen some very cool stuff you can do with Django Restframework. Of course, there are lots of things you can also do. So in case you want to change this method, so sometimes you may have a scenario in which you may have to save or update or create, right? All the time, you can also modify those ones here. In case you want to do that, you have to modify the create method here, and also modify the create method inside your endpoint, right? So that is some stuff you have learned in this wonderful tutorial. So in the next tutorial, I'm going to use a different framework, not Django Rest framework. I'm using Ceph to help us also do something similar. So thank you for watching. And then there is also one more package called WritableNestedSerializer, which is also a very nice way. So let's writable this one, which is another nice package that can help you in case you are working with nested serializers. So as you can see, it's very simple. All you have to do is just inherit it, and then that is all, right? Just specify it as you are seeing here. So you can also use the same approach. Just specify the particular model, and then you can also work with it, right? The same thing that we had here. So in that case, it's going to be, let's try it simply. So pip install Django Ref. I think the name is here. So I'll copy this. There's a tail method, and then I'll go back to my settings as usual. We need to add it to your settings. Perfect. And then I'll go back to my serializer, and then I want to add it, right? So we can quickly do the same thing we did above here. So I'm just going to copy the book serializer because that's what you're trying to nest. and then we will pass it here. So this is using writable nested serializer, right? So in this approach, it goes with this. So we call it as book writable nested serializer, and this will inherit from writable nested. So writable nested. So let me copy the name. So copy this one. So it's going to be from writable nested serializer, import writable nested model. There are a lot of them there, and then I'll use it here. And that's all. So you just go with this option here, and then sometimes for mostly this you have to pick out what you want, because sometimes you have to specify the fields you want to include and the rest, right? And you also have to specify this. So as you can see, there is reverse foreign key, there is direct foreign key. Allow now is very important, right? This is very important. And then there is reverse foreign key, and then the rest, right? So there's very cool stuff you can do with this wonderful package. So let's go with this. Perfect. Perfect. So now we have our writable nested. So inside our book, we would want to, so instead of something like this, right, as we had, we can also go straight away with this, right? I hope it works. I hope I'm not saying nonsense. So you have the profile serializer, we have the writable nested model, we have the site. So in our case, we have our, this is going to be like the book, and then the author, right? And then you specify them here. So just as we had here, the author, we can just go back again and specify the author is going to be my author serializer. And then, yeah, so allow, now it's called to true, right? So this is another way you can do it. And then I can come back again. Let's change it and see if it works. Copy this. I need to change this one also. So let's go back from .serializers, import a book, writable nested model. Let's see how it works. Then I'll go back again to my URLs. Let's add the third one. Not the third, but the fourth endpoint. Fourth version. Version 4. Let's see. So I'll refresh it. We have version number 4. So hopefully it is not going to fail us. Yeah, it will fail us because we have not imported this, right? We don't have it. I think we don't have it here. But I thought I installed it. Yeah, that's funny. I'm surprised it's not coming. So let's see what we are missing. Let's go back here. Just install it. Oh yeah, I understand why it's failing. We don't need to add it. It's not a Django package. It's not a Django app here, right? So you don't need to install it. If I refresh this one, yep, we have the version 4. You can see that it automatically nested it well, right? As you can see, it has brought it out perfectly for us. And if I click on like try it out for the get, we have gotten everything automatically nested. You can see how the structure is, right? So we have the author. It has given us a totally different structure, right? Very simple. And this is the nested one. So let's see if it works as expected. And the structure is this option. So let's take off the partial. And you have this structure that you can actually work on, right? So you have to specify the name. So the name was Jesse. Then this one will be Jesse@gmail. And then we can give it as I say WritableNestedSerializer framework, something like that. And hopefully it works. And now it's working, right? So this is another way. So you have seen 4 different ways you can actually work with foreign keys, primary related field, as well as nested serializers. But the disadvantage is that with this option, sometimes if it's complicated, you may have problems with the patch, right? You may have problems sometimes with it. So thank you for watching this tutorial, and then see you another time. Stay blessed. I hope you have learned something. Stay